Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty unique today.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be taking a look at Tokyo 1960,
Tokyo,
a
1960.
lost Filipino kaiju film.
Lost, huh?
Lost. And get this, despite the name,
Okay.
it was actually shot in Manila.
Really?
Yeah, back in 1957. We've got articles, online discussions, even database entries, all trying to piece together the story of this, well, this cinematic mystery, I guess you could call it.
So, Tokyo 1960, shot in Manila in 57. Sounds like the mystery starts right there in the title.
Right. It's like a puzzle with some very important pieces missing. So what are we doing today? Well, we're going to explore everything we do know about this lost film. How does it connect to the original Gojira? What does it tell us about Filipino cinema? Its relationship to the wider, the kaiju genre? And really, what can we learn from a film that no one has seen in decades?
Well, we can start with what we do know. Tokyo 1960 was released December 27th, 1957,
Okay.
by C. Santiago Film Organization and People's Pictures, Inc., directed by Teodorico C. Santos, big name in Filipino cinema.
Really? So not just a kaiju guy then?
No. Wide range of films, comedies to dramas, you name it.
That's interesting. Maybe that explains some of the unique choices we're seeing, even just in like the marketing of Tokyo 1960.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of unique choices, the film starred Tessie Quintana and Eddie Del Mar.
Okay.
Two very well-known Filipino actors.
So big names.
But the biggest mystery surrounding Tokyo 1960 has got to be the use of footage from the original Gojira, the 1954 Japanese classic, launched the whole kaiju craze.
Yeah, how did they even do that? Like, was it dubbed in Tagalog? Or did they make up a whole new story using those scenes?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it gets even more interesting. The original posters for Tokyo 1960, they actually claim that it was filmed in Tokyo.
Wait, so they were straight up misleading the audience. Why would they do that?
You gotta think about the time. 1950s, the idea of foreign films, it had this allure. Maybe they thought a film set in Tokyo would play better with Filipino audiences.
Interesting.
Or maybe they were trying to capitalize on the success of the Americanized Godzilla, King of the Monsters, which also claimed to be filmed in Tokyo, if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
So
it sounds like they were playing with the audience's expectations a little bit. Like blending, I don't know, Japanese monster action with Filipino storytelling.
Yeah, create something, something new, something exciting.
It's not totally unheard of, is it?
Yeah.
To like rework films for different audiences. Weren't there other international versions of Godzilla that kind of did the same thing?
Absolutely. Godzilla, King of the Monsters, 1956, the American one.
Yeah.
Starring Raymond Burr. They added all these new scenes with American actors and, basically reframed the whole story, gave it an American perspective.
Yeah.
And then there's Godzilla, the Italian version from 77.
Right.
That one's completely colorized. They even, added some new special effects.
Wow, that's wild. Do you think Tokyo 1960 might have done something similar for Filipino viewers? Like added new scenes, maybe a subplot? I don't know.
It's definitely possible. I mean, they marketed it as the mightiest melodrama of them all.
Melodrama, huh?
So, they were going for something more than just a dubbed Gojira. They wanted something that would resonate, really connect with Filipino audiences. So, maybe that involved tweaking things to suit their tastes.
Melodrama and giant monsters. That's a combo I wasn't expecting. It seems like they were really tapping into the global kaiju craze, but also trying to put their own Filipino spin on things.
Exactly. And to really understand that impulse, I think we need to look at the bigger picture, Filipino cinema in the 1950s.
Okay. So Tokyo 1960 wasn't just some random one-off.
No, not at all. It was part of a whole trend of atomic monster films that were popping up in the Philippines back then.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. What exactly is an atomic monster film, though?
Well, think kaiju films. But they emerged after World War II, right, at the dawn of the atomic age.
Right.
And these films often featured monsters that were created by or empowered by nuclear radiation.
Okay.
So they were reflecting, the anxieties and fascinations of the time.
So more than just monster movies then. They were reflecting a specific moment in history.
Exactly. They were processing the fears of a world suddenly facing, nuclear annihilation.
Wow.
And in the Philippines, this subgenre, it took on its own unique flavor, blending elements of, Japanese kaiju cinema with local folklore, anxieties, even political commentary.
Okay, this is getting really interesting. What were some other Filipino atomic monster films from that time? How did they stack up against Tokyo 1960?
Oh, there were a bunch. Tanong Pukik Tuko sa Matrikawa, Anak ng Bulkan.
Wait, A whole wave of Filipino kaiju? I had no idea. What were those like?
Each one had its own, its own take on the genre. Town Phuket, for example, had this giant humanoid monster
Yeah.
terrorizing the countryside.
Mm.
And Unacking Vulcan, well, it's a story about a volcano god who wakes up and, well, causes chaos.
So they weren't just copying the Godzilla formula. They were
Yeah.
doing their own thing.
Yeah. Coming up with their own monsters, their own stories, their own way of engaging with all those atomic age anxieties.
That's so cool. And Tokyo 1960 kind of fits into all of this. Right?
Yeah, it sits at the intersection of all these influences.
Mm.
Japanese monster, mayhem, Filipino storytelling. It's this lost piece of, a fascinating moment in film history, a reminder of just how far kaiju cinema reached and how filmmakers around the world, they adapted it and made it their own.
It's amazing. Okay, but there's this one claim about Tokyo 1960 that we got to talk about.
Sure.
Some sources mention that it was released internationally under titles like Godzilla's Fury or Godzilla 1960.
Yeah.
True.
Well, it's a claim that pops up online a lot, but you got to be careful. There's no real proof.
So it's basically just, what, internet rumors?
Pretty much. It's a good reminder that not everything you read online is true, even if it sounds really exciting.
For sure. But even without those international releases, this whole Tokyo 1960 thing is still pretty significant, right?
Oh, absolutely. The fact that it was made, marketed so creatively that it was part of this larger atomic monster trend,
Yeah.
it tells us something important about the impact of Godzilla, those atomic age anxieties. Imagine if we could actually find a copy of this film.
Oh, man.
It would be incredible. We'd learn so much about Godzilla's global reach, how filmmakers adapted him for different cultures, even about the Filipino cinematic landscape of the 1950s.
It would be like uncovering a lost chapter of film history, a missing piece of the Godzilla puzzle.
Exactly. And we'd also get a deeper understanding of, Teodorico C. Santos's vision
as
a filmmaker. I mean, we know he directed a ton of films, but what drew him to kaiju? What message was he trying to convey?
Yeah. And how did he blend, like, those Filipino storytelling elements into a genre that, let's be honest, was pretty much defined by Japanese aesthetics?
Exactly. These are questions we can only, speculate about right now.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're asking them at all just highlights how important it is to rediscover lost films like Tokyo 1960. They have the potential to change how we see film history, challenge our assumptions, and introduce us to new perspectives, new voices.
It's crazy to think that one lost film could have that much of an impact. It's a good reminder that every film, no matter how obscure, has a story to tell, has something to contribute to, our understanding of the world.
Absolutely. And those stories, they're worth searching for, worth preserving, worth sharing.
Okay, so we've set the stage here. We've got the mystery, the context of Filipino cinema in the atomic age. But what about, like, the actual plot of Tokyo 1960? What do we actually know?
Well, that's where things get a little murky. Without a copy of the film, we're relying on, conjecture.
Okay, educated guesses.
So, we're detectives trying to solve a case with, half the evidence missing.
Kinda, yeah. But that doesn't mean we can't have some fun speculating, right?
Okay. All right, let's put on our detective hats. What clues do we have? Anything in the marketing that might tell us something about the plot?
Well, the posters, the taglines, they offer some interesting hints. Remember how we talked about those international edits tailoring the original film for different audiences?
Right.
The Tokyo 1960 posters, they use imagery and taglines super similar to Godzilla, King of the Monsters, the American one, with Raymond Burr.
Huh. So they're drawing on American marketing even though this is a Filipino production. What's up with that?
Maybe they wanted to tap into Godzilla's global appeal, connect with audiences who already knew the American version. But there's also a chance they were making a more, I guess you could say, subversive statement.
Oh.
Don't forget, the Philippines was a former American colony.
Right. So by using American marketing for a film that was, clearly Filipino, maybe they were commenting on the influence of American culture in the Philippines.
That's a really good point. It's like they were playing with these cultural expectations, blurring the lines between American and Filipino influences. But what about the story itself? Did the posters tell us anything about that?
One poster shows Godzilla looming over Manila Bay.
Okay.
With the tagline, "The mightiest melodrama of them all."
Melodrama. So maybe it is a love story set against, giant monster mayhem.
Maybe.
Or, like a family drama with with Godzilla as an unexpected guest star.
Could be. And remember, this was the 50s. Filipino cinema was known for its melodramatic narratives,
Yeah.
the focus on family dynamics.
Yeah, so it's not a stretch to think those elements
Yeah.
made it into Tokyo 1960, even with, a giant monster stomping around. So we've got Filipino production, American-inspired marketing, and a tagline that screams melodrama. Anything else we can work with?
Well, the casting of Tessie Quintana and Eddie Del Mar, those were two of the biggest Filipino actors at the time.
Right.
So they clearly wanted to appeal to, a wide audience.
Makes sense. Banking on that star power to make the film a hit.
Yep.
But it also suggests that they weren't afraid to mix genres.
Right.
Like taking this Hollywood monster, putting him in a Filipino context with Filipino actors.
Yeah.
Filipino sensibilities, presumably.
It's like they were saying, hey, we can do this too. We can take this global icon and make him our own.
It's such a shame we don't have the film itself to see how they did it.
I know, right?
But I guess that's the thing about lost media. It lets our imaginations run wild.
Yeah, it does.
We get to fill in the blanks, come up with our own interpretations, keeps the mystery alive.
And who knows, maybe one day a copy will just, turn up.
Oh, can you imagine?
And we'll finally get to see how it all came together.
It would be amazing. But for now, I guess we'll have to make do with the clues we've got and the stories we can dream up. So what do you think? What kind of story did Tokyo 1960 tell? What kind of Filipino and American influences went into it?
Yeah, let's hear your theories. And while you're thinking about that, we're going to dive into the career of Teodorico C. Santos.
Oh yeah, the man behind the camera.
What can we learn from his other films that might give us some clues about Tokyo 1960?
Right.
Stay tuned. Teodorico C. Santos. Now, he was a fascinating guy, really left his mark on Filipino cinema, directed a whole bunch of different genres, musicals, comedies, even some action flicks.
Not just melodrama and monsters then.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah.
But he was known for his ability to really connect with audiences, told stories that resonated with their lives.
So a real people person.
I think so, yeah. And it makes his decision to direct Tokyo in 1960 even more interesting, right?
For sure. So what can we learn from his other work? Anything that might give us some insight into how he might approach this lost kaiju film?
Well, one thing that really sticks out is this theme of resilience. Yeah, like in the face of adversity, a lot of his films have characters struggling against the odds, poverty, social injustice, even natural disasters.
Okay, and wouldn't you say that Godzilla himself, kind of embodies overwhelming adversity? I mean, giant monster, destructive power of nature, all that.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to see how Santos might have seen Godzilla as, I don't know, a metaphor for the challenges facing the Filipino people back then, rebuilding their lives after World War II, colonialism,
Right.
finding their identity.
So Tokyo 1960, maybe it wasn't just a monster movie. Maybe it was more about, the strength of the human spirit.
Yeah, maybe it was about resilience, overcoming those seemingly impossible obstacles.
That would make sense, right?
Yeah.
Especially considering what we know about Santos's style. He wasn't afraid to tackle difficult subjects, explore complex emotions, find hope, even in, dark situations.
Exactly. So where are we now? We've got a director known for his themes, his focus on resilience, a marketing campaign that's, well, kind of a blend of American and Filipino influences, and a tagline that screams melodrama.
Right. Are we any closer to cracking the code of Tokyo 1960?
I think we are, yeah. It's like we're putting together a puzzle, one clue at a time.
Yeah, but we're missing that one big piece, the film itself. Without that, I guess all we could do is speculate.
Sure.
But that's half the fun, right?
It is, and who knows, maybe someday someone will find a copy, like in their attic or something.
Oh, that would be incredible.
All right.
But for now, I guess we just got to keep the memory of this film alive.
Yeah.
Have there been any organized efforts to find Tokyo 1960? Are there people out there actively looking for it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The search for lost films it's a global thing. There are tons of people and organizations out there dedicated to tracking these movies down.
Wow.
And Tokyo 1960, with its, Filipino and Japanese influences, it's definitely on their radar.
That's good to hear. At least it's not totally forgotten, though.
Not at all. It's a fascinating film, a lost chapter in both Filipino and kaiju cinema. Rediscovering it would be huge.
Yeah, for sure. I can already picture the headlines. Lost Godzilla film found.
I know.
Filipino kaiju classic resurfaces. But even if we never find it, I think the search itself is, it's important.
Absolutely.
It reminds us how important it is to preserve films, to protect our cultural heritage.
I couldn't agree more. Every lost film it's a gap in our understanding of the past. It's a story untold.
Right.
And in the case of Tokyo 1960, it's a missed opportunity to explore the unique voice of Filipino cinema
Hmm.
within this, global phenomenon.
It really makes you wonder, what other films are out there just waiting to be rediscovered? What stories are we missing?
It's a sobering thought, for sure, but it makes the films we do have all the more precious.
Yeah.
It reminds us to be mindful to support those archivists and historians who are, working so hard to preserve our cinematic history.
Absolutely. Okay, back to Tokyo 1960. We've talked about the director, the marketing, but what about the monster himself?
Yeah.
Godzilla. How was he portrayed? Was he just a destructive force?
Yeah.
A symbol of nature's wrath? Or was there something more to him?
Another good question. And again, it's hard to say for sure without seeing the film,
All right.
but, we can make some educated guesses.
Okay, let's hear him. What clues do we have about Godzilla's role in Tokyo 1960?
The posters, for one, they really play up his size, his power. He's towering over buildings, radiating atomic energy.
A force to be reckoned with.
Right. But there's also this, I don't know, this ambiguity to his expression. He doesn't look, purely evil.
Huh. So maybe he's not the straightforward bad guy we see in, like, some of the later films.
Maybe not. Maybe he's more of a force of nature. Unpredictable, awe-inspiring,
Okay.
capable of both destruction and creation.
That's interesting. And this was still, pretty early in Godzilla's film career.
Oh, yeah.
The character was still evolving. Filmmakers around the world were still figuring out his motivations, his complexities.
Exactly. The Godzilla of 1954 was a very different beast than, the Godzilla we see later on.
Right. He was more primal,
Yeah.
more ambiguous.
Yeah.
A reflection of, like, the anxieties of a world still dealing with the horrors of atomic warfare.
Precisely. And that's what makes Tokyo 1960 so interesting. It captures Godzilla at this crucial point in his development.
Before he became the pop culture icon we know today.
Right. So, in a way, Tokyo 1960 could give us a glimpse into a lost era of Godzilla, a time when he was still a symbol of, primal fear,
Yeah.
a walking embodiment of atomic power.
It's a cool thought. And it just makes finding this film even more important.
Absolutely. It could change how we see Godzilla's early years, his impact on the world,
Yeah.
how filmmakers from different cultures saw his character.
Okay, so we've got a potentially more nuanced Godzilla than we might expect, a director with a knack for deep themes, a marketing campaign that mixes American and Filipino elements. What else can we add to the puzzle?
Well, we can't forget the historical context. The Philippines in the 1950s was a nation in transition.
Oh, right. They were dealing with, like, the effects of colonialism, the war, economic uncertainty.
It was a time of hope and anxiety, rebuilding, reinventing themselves. How do you think that might have played into Tokyo 1960?
Well, maybe Godzilla represents the challenges they were facing, like the destructive forces of nature, the trauma of war, even the, political and economic instability.
Yeah, that's possible. Maybe Tokyo 1960 wasn't just about a monster destroying stuff. Maybe it was about something deeper, something that really spoke to Filipino audiences.
I like that idea.
And it fits with Santos' style, too. Remember, he wasn't afraid to tackle social issues, explore those complex emotions, find hope in the darkness.
We're seeing a pattern here, aren't we? A nuanced director, a mixed marketing campaign, melodrama, a historical context that hints at something deeper.
Yeah, it all suggests Tokyo 1960 was more than just a monster movie. It was a work of art reflecting the anxieties, the hopes, the identity of the Philippines in the 50s.
It's just too bad we can only speculate about the specifics.
I know, right?
But that's kind of the magic of lost media, isn't it? It gets our imaginations going, makes us think critically, reminds us that there are still stories out there waiting to be found.
It also reminds us how important it is to preserve films. Every lost film is a gap in our understanding of the past.
Right.
It's a story untold. And Tokyo 1960 is, well, it's a missed opportunity to really explore that unique voice of Filipino cinema.
Yeah. It's like we're looking at a tapestry with missing threads. We can see the overall picture, but it's incomplete.
Perfect analogy. And it's up to us as film lovers, historians, to keep searching for those missing threads.
To complete the tapestry.
Exactly, one lost film at a time.
Okay, but let's not forget about our listeners. What do you think about all this? What clues have stood out to you? What kind of story do you imagine Tokyo 1960 might have told?
Yeah, what do you think? What would its rediscovery mean for, I don't know, our understanding of Godzilla, Filipino cinema, even the way ideas spread around the world back in the 20th century?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. It's amazing that a film like Tokyo 1960 can still get people talking, even after all these years. It's been lost for decades, but it still has this power.
It really does. And I think a lot of that has to do with, well, with Godzilla himself.
Right. He's more than just a monster at this point. He's like a global icon.
Exactly. He represents destruction, sure, but also resilience.
Yeah,
And the fact that filmmakers all over the world, even in the Philippines, were inspired to make their own Godzilla films, it just shows you how big of an impact he had.
it's true. He's almost like, I don't know, like a blank canvas. Different cultures can see themselves in him. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Project their own anxieties, their own hopes.
Exactly. He's not just a Japanese monster anymore. He's something much bigger.
And Tokyo 1960s feels like a perfect example of that. Taking Godzilla, this global icon, and putting him in a Filipino context.
It makes you wonder how Santos used Godzilla to, I don't know, to reflect what was going on in the Philippines back then.
Oh yeah, in the 50s.
Remember, they were still dealing with the aftermath of World War II,
Right.
colonialism, the Cold War.
And don't forget about the natural disasters. The Philippines is an island nation, so that's always a threat.
Oh, for sure. Maybe Godzilla, with all his destructive power, was a way to represent those forces of nature.
Yeah, the ones that are both, I don't know, beautiful and terrifying at the same time.
And remember, the film was marketed as a melodrama,
Right, right.
so there had to be a human element to the story, too. Maybe a family trying to survive, or a community rebuilding after Godzilla attacks.
So Godzilla is not just destroying things, he's also like a catalyst for change.
Yeah, he forces people to adapt, to overcome.
It makes you think about resilience, about the strength of the human spirit.
I like that. And it fits with what we know about Santos and his other films, right? Always
Wow.
exploring those themes of hope and resilience.
It all ties together. It's like Godzilla himself becomes a symbol of, I don't know, like the cycle of destruction and renewal.
It's a powerful image.
It is. And it shows how Godzilla can be interpreted in so many different ways. He's not just a Japanese monster anymore. He's a global figure.
He really is. And Tokyo 1960, even though it's lost, reminds us of that.
It's like he's a mirror reflecting back to us whatever we're feeling.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It shows the power of film to connect with people, no matter where they're from.
Absolutely.
Well, we could probably talk about Tokyo 1960 all day,
I know, right?
but all good things must come to an end. So to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the mystery of Tokyo 1960 with us.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
And who knows, maybe one of you will be the one to find those missing reels.
Wouldn't that be something?
It would. But until then, keep searching, keep exploring, and never lose that sense of wonder about cinema.
Well said. And remember, every film, even the lost ones, has a story to tell. It's up to us to keep those stories alive.
So, as we say goodbye to Tokyo 1960, we want to leave you with one last thought. What lost films are you curious about? What cinematic mysteries would you like to see solved?
And what can we all do to make sure that future generations can experience the full history of film?
Think about those questions as you continue your own cinematic journeys. Until next time, happy viewing.